Ladies and gentlemen, Alison Gannett.
So I was getting on the plane to come here, and there were a bunch of people with very strange mustaches and beards on the plane. Did you guys know that the World Mustache and Beard Competition is going on at this same time in Austin, Texas? It was hilarious. I had to look it up on the internet last night. So we're going to talk about cancer and ketogenic diet. And, you know, I've had a crazy life. I was a fat, dorky math geek, and I really was picked last and, wet my pants on the jungle gym and was very teased as a kid. I think I overcompensated and became a world champion extreme skier. I jump off cliffs for a living. So I don't think it was necessarily a good thing, but I think the great thing that the empowerment of extreme sports gave me was a lot of confidence in myself and my fearless nature. I was an adult onset athlete, let's say that. But in 2013, my world was completely rocked. They found this giant tumor in my brain. I was acting kind of weird for a couple years, but one day I was cooking bacon and the whole house was like catching on fire, and I was mesmerized with the wall of the flames going up. And my husband comes in and he's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, nothing, I didn't think it was a problem that the house was burning down," and he took me to the emergency room. Luckily, a few days later, they were able to remove most of that tumor, and I began, my whole life just changed at that moment in 2013. I really didn't know that it was the biggest cliff that I was going to ever jump off of. I was vegan and vegetarian. I was following all the guidelines of eating brown rice and low fat and lots of vegetables that were steamed, and my doctor that I found was like, "No, you need to eat tons of fat and tons of vegetables and a little bit of meat, and this is going to help you prevent the cancer from coming back." So I found my lovely doctor, Dr. Naisha Winters of Optimal Terrain Consulting, and if anybody has cancer or knows someone who has cancer, scribble that one down, optimalterrainconsulting.com, because I was only supposed to live 1 year. And with surgery, chemo, and radiation, my quality of life was supposed to be less than 1 year and very poor quality. Anybody that knows people that have had radiation to the brain and exceedingly high doses of chemo, we don't come out looking pretty good after that, and we usually die very quickly. I knew that I didn't want that to happen to me. And people are like, "Well, what are you going to do? Ketogenic? I mean, that food can be so dangerous. Look out." So I definitely decided that keto plus a whole lot more, I like to call it the future of cancer treatment, because I don't think this is like alternative. I don't think this is hippy-dippy, oovy-groovy, and you'll see why I don't think so in a second. And this is very important, and you'll see this over and over in my presentation, is every one of us in the room is different. If we all were diagnosed with terminal malignant brain cancer, there would all be different reasons that we got it. So it's very important that we tailor our treatments to match our root causes. So this is a very fancy diagram that my doctor contrived, and it is all the factors that play into the typical cancering process. Hopefully our slides are going to be available for people later. You guys say yes? I don't know. And of course, how many people have heard about mitochondria? Really, what we're talking about here when we talk about the therapeutic ketogenic diet is healing our mitochondria and all these different reasons that we get cancer, like stress and inflammation and poor diet and thyroid and HPA access, all really are affecting the mitochondria. So I used to initially say we're talking about addressing inflammation, but what I really think is below inflammation at the root of it all is mitochondria. Oh, back up. So these are the 10 factors that my Dr. Nasha Winters likes to look at for the reasons that we get cancer. And I have to say, when I went through this list with her, my initial appointment, I get about a 75-page report from her. And it's like, these are all the reasons that you have cancer, and here's step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. And of course, step 1 was, lo and behold, the ketogenic diet, because cancer loves sugar. And cancer loves carbs because carbs break down into sugar. So we were farmers, and so I turned to my pharmacy, the FARM variety, instead of the pharmacy, the other one, and started on my journey. I have to say I was a carbaholic. You know, being vegan and vegetarian, I mean, you eat a ton of rice and pasta and all different kinds of carbs. I didn't mean to be high sugar, but when I tested my blood markers, they definitely were. I also ate tons of sugary vegetables that I grew on my farm. I thought I was like this, you know, super endurance athlete, super healthy person, and I wasn't. When you looked at my blood work, and that's kind of been the theme of this morning, is that skinny, fat, healthy person. I used to be a fat, unhealthy person, then I became a skinny, unhealthy person, and hopefully now I've found a new balance. I haven't relinquished my love of chocolate, and now I make ice cream every day with Lecanto Golden. It's a monk fruit type sugar, and I make chocolate every day. You know, ketogenic diet has to be delicious. It can't be torturous. So what does my typical diet look like? And again, of course, everybody's different, but I think as a cancer coach now, because I was so amazed with the fact that I was alive, and then once I realized I was alive, my doctor asked me if I wanted to train with her, and I said, of course, you know, I want to help other people discover what I have discovered on this journey. And one of the things I do with my clients is we use Chronometer. How many people here use Chronometer or MyFitnessPal, some kind of tracking? There has not been one client of mine in the last 2 years that has come to me with a Chronometer diet. They all said, I'm ketogenic, and then when we look at it, they are not therapeutic ketogenic for cancer. Switch? Oh, thank you. You're yelling at me, and I didn't hear you. Do you want to leave this? Oh, probably. Oh, I'll have a pretty necklace. Is that better? Oh, yes. So the therapeutic ketogenic diet for cancer is 85% carb, 85% fat. That was funny. 5% carb and 10% protein. But every single person's different. When I look at someone's blood work, you know, I'm really looking at the fasting insulin that we've been talking a lot this morning, but also looking at a lot of other factors. You know, do they have fatty liver going on? What are the other health issues involved? What's the patient history? Do they have hormone problems? Looking for thyroid problems. But I think what a lot of people are blown away at is the amount of fat that I eat in a day, which is somewhere between 2 and 3 cups of fat a day, which is about 216 grams to 320 grams. I find that if I eat less fat than that, I actually don't have as good a scans, and I don't have as good a blood work. And my protein intake is really low. And anyway, I think tracking is key. I see that the cancer patients that I see that are tracking with Chronometer and testing their ketones and their glucose have the most success. The people that are guessing, not so much. So I'm not going to read all my slides, but a lot of people ask, do you track total carbs or do you track net carbs? I absolutely, for cancer patients, we're using total carbs. And the reason being is everybody metabolizes fiber differently. So we really have to test. We put in the 85-5-10 in Chronometer, and then we test people's ketones, the blood ketones, and we also use acetoacetate for breath ketones and serum glucose. And it's the magic of all of those combined with the high level of veggies. I think a lot of people do keto and they come to me and they're like, yeah, I had breakfast, it was sausage, cream cheese, and heavy whipping cream. And, while that is going to put you in keto, possibly, for cancer, we really need that high level of antioxidants. We need those cells to be rebuilding with good things like polyphenols. The other thing is people eat the same vegetables every day, and they eat the same fats every day. My vegetables change every meal, and my fats change every meal. And then the fats are also going to change depending on your genetics, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. And the dairy picture you can see at the very end there, I think it's very important. If people's IGF-1, and we've heard IGF-1, insulin growth factor, mentioned many times this morning, this is a big cancer feeder. So I always have everybody test IGF-1, and if you're over 100, no dairy for you. So the number 2 terrain 10 that I've worked on is keto for inflammation. And you can see here that I'm tracking on the top slide. Does this have a pointer? No? Nope. Anyway, the top little box, you can see that my eosinophils, and those eosinophils are going to indicate whether I have allergies going on. And we have to determine, is that coming from leaky gut, as we heard about this morning, which is a common cause, or is it coming from an outside food source? The 3 main trackers, and you want to write this down if you're tracking cancer, are CRP, lactate dehydrogenase, and sedimentation rate, which is called ESR. If those 3 are high, we see people that are likely cancering. Every single person has millions of cancer cells in their body. Everybody in this room, people always ask me, do you have cancer? I'm like, yes, so do you. We all have cancer. But whether cancer hooks up to our vascular system and becomes a tumor, and that tumor starts to grow and divide and metastasis, the cancer-ing is the problem. It's not the cancer. And that's what's amazing with the ketogenic diet, is it automatically lowers many, many markers of inflammation. So I was an adult onset athlete, like I mentioned. I had to get rid of my athleticism. It was actually causing a lot of inflammation in my body. Not enough exercise is inflammatory. Too much is inflammatory. So now we're going to talk about epigenetics or genetics, and there's so much research. I'm not going to go into genetics here because I could give an entire talk on that. But there are so many epigenetic and genetic markers that are modified with the ketogenic diet. And I think the biggest one I want to highlight here is that we have the regulation of apoptosis, and that's cell death. So has everybody heard of the fact that cancer cells don't die? So the ketogenic diet regulates apoptosis, or cell death. So by going ketogenic, you can actually be killing cancer cells, and you're not only just starving them of their favorite food, of glucose. So keto is rebuilding all those healthy mitochondria. We're supposed to go fast today. This is my personal DNA model. And so all of these factors, whether it was a vitamin D deficiency or B12, all these things played into my cancer. I also have an inability to process hormones in my DNA and an inability to process toxins. So that big players in my cancering process. So the cool thing that I do with myself and with my clients, what my doctor taught me to do, is how to track my labs or their labs and combine it with their DNA and with their patient history. You can see why it's very scientific in the way that we can use keto for cancer. Stress response and circadian rhythm, lack of sleep and too much stress in the body. This little slide here, I put that on there because the cortisol, you can see, was my cortisol on the far side was 20. I added meditation and heart math into my life, and my cortisol dropped in half. Cortisol can drive up sugars, so even if you're on a perfectly keto diet and you have stress in your life, you can actually drive up insulin and drive up sugars. So you can make your own cancer magic cocktail with stress. So I had to change my whole life. more play, exercise like Laura Ingalls Wilder would on Little House on the Prairie. Doing one thing at a time. This is really hard for me. Oh, I missed my favorite slide. I had 10 tennis balls in my mouth for sure. I try to have just one tennis ball in my mouth now. And before, I spent a lot of time doing environmental activism, and I had to really reel that back. If I'm not saving myself, I'm not going to be able to save the world. All right. So the toxic burden, we talked about tracking IGF-1. Basically, if you're eating keto and you're eating conventional meats or conventional dairy or unorganic vegetables, I will see it in your labs. I have clients that basically come to me and they're like, I'm eating all organic, and I'm like, no, you're not. I can see it in your labs. Immune function, vitamin D is the driver of everything. We like to have vitamin D levels between 80 and 120, which is pretty high. And of course, like we heard earlier today, vitamin D from sunshine, actually taking the sunscreen off the body and getting outside like we used to, is really key for that. But genetic factors come into play. I have a genetic predisposition to low vitamin D. My vitamin D receptor is broken, so I have to supplement with vitamin D despite getting over 5 hours of sunshine a day. Immune function, there's so many labs that we can use to test for immune function, and a lot, I would say almost 80% of the cancer patients have some kind of autoimmune dysfunction, and a lot of times that is from the chemo and radiation itself. So we try to reverse that and build a healthy immune system. I also see an unhealthy immune system basically when people are not eating enough vegetables and they're not eating a wide variety of fats. Angiogenesis, this is basically those circulating tumor cells that we all have, the way they hook up to our blood vessels and create tumors. So we really want to track all the factors that can contribute to angiogenesis. Ketogenic diet actually can reverse those tumor cells being connected to our blood vessel systems. So we can often have a tumor that's in the body that is uncancering for 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years. We don't care about tumors. We care about the mitochondria, the inflammation, the immune system. And if the body is going to take care of itself, the tumor isn't necessarily going to flush out of the body. Sometimes it's just stuck there as a collection of dead cells. It's very important to track labs like ferritin. Cancer loves high ferritin. So if you have high ferritin, it's above 100. My doctor recommends you go give blood every 6 weeks. Or 3 months. Everybody's different, I should say. The microbiome, we talked about this a lot this morning, and that talk was great. I had my microbiome tested, and the test came back and said, you have the microbiome of a 400-pound woman with type 1 diabetes. So I have spent the last 4 years, 3 months working on my microbiome, and I have to say it actually improved significantly this month. And when he said this morning that it can take years for it to recover, I am going to say it took mine exactly 4 years and 1 month to recover from what I did to my microbiome. Hormone balance. So all these red and yellow marks on these slides basically were estrogen stored in my breasts. So my doctor said, you are working your way up to some lovely breast cancer. And the ketogenic diet, what's interesting is the top slide, I was on about 1 cup of fat a day, and the bottom slide is I was on about 2.5 cups of fat a day. So it's not just about the absence of carbs for cancer, but the increasing of really good fats in the diet that actually open up those fat cells and allow the estrogen to come out of those cells and come out in the urine. You can see that I had polycystic ovarian disease, unknown to me when I was diagnosed with cancer, and the ketogenic diet got rid of that as well. Mental, emotional. This was a hard one for me because a lot of people do all the right things with the ketogenic diet, but miss the stress component and the mental, emotional component. So I really had to track my labs using cortisol and CO2 to make sure that I was managing my stress and not letting that be a component in my cancer. EFT, emotional freedom technique, was a really great one for me. Common keto mistakes. We're wrapping up to the end here. I think you can understand that keto is not a stand-alone therapy. We talked about food quality, food quantity, the level of the fats, the variety of the vegetables. And this is all about customization. For any person in this room, if I did your lab tests and I did your DNA, every single person here, I would put on a different ketogenic diet. There's things like ApoE status, like I have ApoE4, and so I have to change what types of fats I eat versus someone who does not have ApoE4. So I'm going to end with saying that ketogenic diet has to be amazingly yummy. If I was told tomorrow that I didn't have a deadly malignant brain tumor that got taken out of my head 4 years ago, would I do anything different today? Never. I have to say, the food that I make, I love to cook now. I didn't love to cook before, and everything I eat is absolutely the best ever. My nieces and nephews are testament to, they say, Auntie Allison, your food is so much better now that you have cancer. That's what we should be hearing, right? Not that, let's put that person over there in the corner and they get this weird keto meal. So cancer's been my best teacher. I say it's my ultimate gift. It's not only given me life, but it's changed my whole life for the better. Normal gave me cancer. I thought my normal was great, but my new normal is a whole lot better. And so I want to say thanks to Brian and thanks to Jimmy, because I wouldn't be here without them. And this has been an incredible journey of discovering my health, and it's unfortunate that I had to almost die to be here today to give you health. And so I thank you so much, and I hope you guys can go out there and save the world with me. And oh my gosh, we have time for questions, so. Oh, we have a jogger, yes.
Hello.
Don't overdo your inflammation.
Okay. Your presentation was incredible. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
My father died from he died from the treatments of lung cancer, not from the cancer.
Yeah.
My mother's sister died from ovarian cancer. Another aunt on my mom's side also died from ovarian cancer. I have no children, which is a higher risk for female-related cancers. And so, I've been following a ketogenic diet for 1.5 years, but I'm wondering if there are some things that I should be really looking for in order to quell the chance that those things would come my way.
Absolutely. You can freeze frame in the video, the way I test my lab work, and that's what I do for my clients. So you'd want to look at inflammation, you'd want to look at immune function, basically the ranges that my doctor gives for those markers is very strict. Based on the history of the breast cancers, you would definitely want to look at hormones and see if hormones are a player for you. Basically, the ketogenic diet will flush out a lot of hormones, but then you also want to cross-reference that with your DNA. Have you done the 23andMe test?
No.
So a 23andMe test will probably show, since you have a lot of those breast cancers in the family, the inability to purge estrogen. So, I could go on all day about cross-referencing your labs with your DNA to customize a diet for you, and we can certainly do that, but estrogen cancers love plastic, so you really want to stay away from receipts from plastic water bottles, food in plastic, supplements in plastic. You know, that's a big one for breast cancers.
Wow.
But there's a lot of other factors that play in with breast cancers, particularly blood sugars. So you really want to monitor not only your ketone levels being high, but your fasting insulin being under 3, and also your fasting glucose in the high 60s.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, great presentation. That was a wonderful talk. I'm curious about upping the fat intake so much. I mean, I'm all into that, but at some point, I've always read that you become fat adapted. You don't have to do so much fat anymore, but cancer is one of my triggers. I mean, my family's all had it. So is it better just to increase it? I mean, I run my blood work and stuff a lot. I haven't checked for a lot of the things that you've brought up, but what do you think about that?
You know, everybody's different. So I'm going to say your lab work is going to be different than my lab work.
Right.
But what I have seen is when my fat got up to the 85% that I needed on chronometer, I usually see people at 120 grams of fat, and they think that that's fine.
Right.
And for people with a very sedimentary life, 120 grams of fat might be just perfect.
Right.
For me, I'm not exercising anymore, but I'm moving around all day, and I really just saw the estrogen and the toxins be purged out of my bodies on the scan when my fat got higher.
Right.
So I really do think that we're not paying enough attention to the different kinds of fats that we're eating, rotating them around, and using that fat being high to open the fat cells that are existing in the body, which is going to purge those toxins that I've had in my body for 52 years. So I think that's the mechanism that I'm seeing that's happening when the insulin comes down and the fat comes up. So
Okay.
I really do think it's a magical recipe right there.
And different kinds of fat.
Really different kinds of fat. You know, you're having all the monosaturated, the olive oil, the macadamia oil, the avocado oil, the lard. I do lard, and I do tallow, chicken fat, duck fat, coconut oil, MCT, you know, you name it. Move them around. They all have different nutrients. It would be just like if we ate spinach and avocado oil and called it keto. You know, what are we getting for nutrients? We
Right.
have to mix it up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do you have a certain level of ketones and glucose that you're trying to shoot for to be in the optimal range to fight the cancer?
Again, my favorite answer is it depends. But in general, for people who have low-grade cancers that aren't really sugar-hungry cancers, oftentimes levels of ketones from 1 to 3 are going to be fine. Serum glucose, I'm always going to want that to be in the high 60s, maybe low 70s, depending on the person. But a lot of times, it's if their diet's perfect and I see the serum glucose going high, it's often due to the fact that they're stress mongers and they're not dealing with stress in their life, and their cortisol is driving up their fasting glucose. So if anybody has metastatic cancer or a cancer like mine with brain cancer, pancreatic cancer, you know, some cancer that's metastasized in the body, we go for higher ketones from 3 to 7.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Hey, great presentation. Question on organics. First off, our son has GBM, so brain cancer. He's been on the ketogenic diet for almost 2 years. The MRI scans continue to come back as clear or stable. So we're really pleased with the ketogenic diet. He eats organic. Nothing goes in his body that's not organic. I think one of the things that we've always loved to do as a family is go out and eat dinner. Of course, eating out at restaurants makes that real challenging. Can you talk about what you do when you're on the road traveling? Because that's got to be a huge challenge.
Traveling is a huge challenge, and every time I go traveling and I don't bring my food, I come back and my liver enzymes have suffered. Unfiltered water, I just had an exposure in January. It affected my liver enzymes and my lactate dehydrogenase, one of the markers for cancers that we use. It affected it 1-2 week trip, affected those markers for 5 months. So for anybody on the verge of cancer, having unfiltered water or unorganic food or non-pastured, grass-fed, grass-finished meats, that could be enough to tip us over the edge. So anybody who's seen me at the airport with the beard and the mustache people, they would see I have a giant rolly bag. It's as big as me. I can actually fit inside it. And it has 2 coolers in it. One cooler is a hard-shelled cooler, and it's packed with little glass jars. I puree herbs, parsley, cilantro, shallots, garlic, with some type of fat, and I package them in 1 meal jars, which is 1 cup of fat with those vegetables. So I go out to eat, and I'll order like a salmon or wild-caught salmon or grass-fed hamburger, a salad, and some vegetables cooked in butter. Hamburger and salad, all that's cooked in some kind of butter. And then I take my little purse, and I pull out my container, and I dump it over the top. And I do that the same with my scrambled eggs. I do a lot of intermittent fasting when I travel. So basically, when I travel for a month, I need 2 jars to 2 cups a day. So that means I'm going to have 60 cups of fat in my checked luggage, frozen. So it works. I think I'm out of time.